How does one sum up the career of someone who is perhaps America's most celebrated filmmaker? Quentin Tarantino is a name that is synonymous with the word cool. Those old enough to remember his meteoric rise to fame back in the mid to late 90s also remember that Pulp Fiction was the film that started it all. A film that just oozed style and effortless cool, but most important, had the kind of substance that made a cinematic work so memorable. Pulp Fiction was very easy to read purely on a surface level. The clever dialogue, endless references to pop culture, both old and new, and the interweaving storylines which gave the film a kind of feeling of an endless loop. But these were all the superficial aspects of the film. There was far more going on under the surface than people realized, and it's something that would come to define most of Tarantino's work going forward. Tarantino's backstory is as mythical as the films he makes. Growing up in Los Angeles and being a movie fanatic with an encyclopedic knowledge of film, Tarantino honed his knowledge while famously working at the long-defunct Video Archives, a bygone era of the video rental experience. Located in Manhattan Beach, California, the store had a sizable collection of movies from all different corners of cinema. Tarantino quickly became a prolific video store clerk, recommending interesting titles to customers and getting into heated arguments with his coworkers on the merits or lack thereof of certain movies. Initially, Tarantino wanted to be an actor, feeling more of a kinship with performers than directors or writers, but he found himself writing a lot and began to gravitate towards working behind the camera rather than in front of it. His job at Video Archives allowed him to save enough money to slowly piece together his first feature film, called My Best Friend's Birthday. Shot in 16mm black and white, the film took 3 years to complete. Ultimately, it wasn't something he was comfortable using as a demo of his talents, so he shelved it and began to focus on writing scripts for Hollywood, one of which, True Romance, became his first sale. It allowed him to gain a foothold in the industry and take other writing gigs to support himself, one of which was From Dusk Till Dawn. But Tarantino wasn't satisfied being just a writer for hire. He wanted to direct, and his plan became to use the money from the True Romance script sale, $50,000, and direct a small movie called Reservoir Dogs. He would cast himself and his friends and shoot on 16mm black and white, like his first feature. But Lawrence Bender, a struggling producer who'd recently befriended Tarantino, read the Dogs script and insisted there was a much better movie than Friends in 16mm black and white could deliver. Bender wanted to find a lot more money to make the film something that could compete with other Hollywood fare. The breakthrough came when Harvey Keitel got a hold of the script, and from there, money flowed fairly easily. Along with money came an amazing cast, and the eventual film put Tarantino on the map. But it was Pulp Fiction that would launch his career into orbit. How on earth can a movie that revels in movie violence so shamelessly have a very strict and admirable morality teeming beneath its provocative surface? Tarantino's hip, clever characters and their penchant for violence and drug use seem to be the furthest thing from morality one could imagine. But the morality of Pulp Fiction lies in the way certain events unfold. How about the scene in the diner, which, interestingly enough, both opens and closes the film, suggesting it is a lot more important than it may seem at first glance. In it, Jules goes through a fairly major transformation, and the diner becomes a turning point in the film. Even though it takes place at the end of the film, chronologically, Jules and Vincent go to Marcellus's club after this scene. So what is the ending of the movie is really the middle of the story. Jules, someone who doesn't hesitate when it comes to dressing down, humiliating and then executing targets, does the opposite. He counsels and gives advice to someone who easily deserves his wrath. The theme of morality in this scene is fairly obvious. Jules gives a criminal a second chance, just like he feels God has given him a second chance to follow his word. But what isn't so obvious is the scene in the car as Jules, Vincent, and Marvin flee the scene of the brutal massacre they just participated in at the apartment. The subject of the unexplained bullets comes up, and their failure to hit either Jules or Vincent, even though they were clear non-moving targets being fired at directly by the guy in the bathroom. Jules thinks it was a divine intervention, an act of God that saved them. Vincent is more cynical and thinks it was blind luck. When it comes time for Marvin to give his opinion, it turns out he has none. Marvin's head practically explodes from the accidental shot from Vincent's gun. The particulars of this scene of morality lies in the swift nature these events flow from one to the other. Marvin is asked a direct question about the possibility of God intervening, and he is essentially punished for his lack of conviction and summarily executed. In a sense, Tarantino's point is one must take a stand in their beliefs or face certain death. Or even deeper, that life itself is all about choices, and death can come when those choices are poorly thought out, or in Marvin's case, not thought out at all. This becomes even clearer during the film's most eye-opening moment, when the star of the film, John Travolta, is killed, shot dead by Butch. Remember, chronologically, this scene takes place after the diner, in which Jules makes the decision to take the events in the apartment as a sign of God giving him a chance to end his violent ways and follow his word. But Vincent ignores this, and, like Marvin, is summarily executed for his poor decision-making. In a sense, it's God finishing what the guy in the bathroom started. Jules is spared for his wisdom, and Vincent is punished for his ignorance. And this strange sense of morality among violence is presented when Butch, having escaped the clutches of the evil hillbillies, makes the decision to rescue Marcellus, a man who, just a few moments ago, wanted him dead for betraying him. And Marcellus himself has a miraculous change of heart and allows Butch to leave, but only if he makes a promise never to return. This ethical code of conduct among criminals is an eye-opening contrast to the vicious and remorseless violence that permeates the film. But perhaps Tarantino is suggesting that violence is simply a byproduct of an Old Testament God, with all the wrath and carnage that part of the Bible is famous for. In the end, God's will can be seen as an ends justifies the means form of governance, with a much larger view of events than the narrow focus human beings are known for. Pulp Fiction, taken as a whole, can be seen as an expression of this idea. Among the blood and bodies, a very poignant theme emerges that acts to enrich the narrative, and is one of the main ingredients of Pulp Fiction's longevity. And it's something many of the subsequent Tarantino imitators fail to grasp. Their shameless copies lack the soul that Pulp Fiction radiated. Violence in cinema was a hot-button topic in the 90s, with many decrying filmmakers like Paul Verhoeven and Brian De Palma for shamelessly reveling in horrific visuals. Tarantino was also a target for criticism, but the filmmaker seems to use violence in the way other filmmakers use words, to make a point. If you enjoyed this video, consider hitting the like and subscribe button, as I'll be posting more content in the future. Thanks for watching.